Hi.
How are you?
Very warm.
What's it like over there?
It's beautiful. I know. Look in the background at the
It's
blue sky.
definitely gorgeous, but I'd heard you guys were hot, or that's over.
No, we're about 85.
Oh, okay, that's lovely. That's okay.
Yeah, but with this, it's the sunshine. I'm sitting in the shade. I found myself a spot next to a tree.
Oh, good man. Okay,
Uh,
so let's back up a little bit, and would you introduce yourself and tell me your story about how you got into wine, and how you got to southern France?
okay, I'm John Bojanowski. With my wife Nicole, we have a domain called Clos du Gravillas in Saint-Jean-de-Minervois, which is in Languedoc, south of France. She's from 15 minutes down the hill between here and Narbonne. I'm from Kentucky. I was working in Paris for about 5 years, beginning
Oh,
of the first 5 years of the 90s. And I had a colleague from Narbonne who brought me down here to show me what the real France was all about. And I never left. So my wife, Nicole, at the time was working as a wine export manager.
okay.
And she'd caught the bug and decided that she was going to grow grapes and make wine. And that's when we met.
Wow. So, where are
I drive the tractor.
where where are you from, Narbonne? Just
Huh?
where are you
We
from?
we are 30 minutes uphill.
Oh, okay.
So um, we basically cross the line halfway between Béziers and Carcassonne when driving uphill from
Okay.
Narbonne.
So do you
So we're
those
we're the we're the most easternly village in the Minervois, and the next village over is in Saint-Chinian.
Okay. And do you get those crazy winds from Narbonne?
Well, we get winds from Narbonne about a quarter of the time, but the high winds are the ones that come from the other direction, from the north.
And is
So
that
like the tramontane, we just call it the north wind, but it could be the mistral or the tramontane depending on where you live in the south of France.
right? So tell me, I tramontane can it just means a wind from the north. It doesn't mean that particular wind, right?
Well, tramontane is a wind that's coming across the mountain, trans mountain.
Okay. Oh,
Uh,
that's doesn't it?
so depending on where, I mean, we've got the black mountains or the Black Hills a few miles back,
Okay.
but here the people just call it the north wind.
So can you tell us about Clos du Gravia?
Yeah, mm, we met, or we actually, well, we met say 93, 94. By 1990, end of 94, I was living in Montpellier, so I'd left my work in Paris, and we were looking for the terroir, and what Nicole was looking for was white limestone gravel at altitude, and in Saint-Jean-de-Minervois, and here where I am right now in Cazel, 3 kilometers away, white limestone gravel is everywhere. I'm not sure, maybe if you look
Oh
right
yeah.
down there behind me, there's more rocks than dirt.
Uh-huh.
Uh, we bought our house and started renovating end of 96. First vineyard was bought in 99. It was a old Carignan and Grenache Gris vineyard planted in 1911.
Oh
So
wow.
in 1999, we produced a red from Carignan and a white from Grenache Gris. And since then, every year or two, something has been planted or purchased, and we're up now to 20 varietals, grape varietals, and almost 9 hectares.
Wow, that's great. Did I misspeak and pronounce it right? I said it's supposed to be Gravillas or Gravia.
Gravillas. In this part of the world, we pronounce the final S or
Right.
most of the final letters.
Right.
So it's Gravillas, and it means gravel. It's Occitan for gravel.
Oh, okay. Um, so your appellation is Saint-Jean-de-Minervois?
For the sweet VDN Muscat wine, it's Saint-Jean-de-Minervois. For everything else, it's Minervois. And sometime in the next 2 weeks to 5 years, we expect to have a cru designation for where I'm sitting right now, Cazel. So
Oh,
Minervois Cazel.
okay. Can you explain the three different appellations for people that might not be wine experts?
Yeah. Um, The Minervois is well, appellations are geographical, and then there's a set of rules that you have to follow in order to declare your wines in that appellation. So the Minervois goes basically from the gates of Béziers to the gates of Carcassonne, about 50 kilometers long and 25, 30 kilometers wide. There's a bunch of different types of soil within there. Most of it are limestone, clay limestone.
Mm-hmm.
Some much more deep and loamy and richer than others. And up here on what they call the Clos, which are the hillsides, rocky hillsides, there's a lot of white limestone rocks. So that's Minervois. You also have to follow rules like using certain grape varietals and not using other ones. So in Minervois red, you've got Syrah, Carignan, Cinsault, Grenache, Tourette Noir, but not Tourette Gris, and et cetera, et cetera. We started in the beginning, okay, and then in Saint-Jean-de-Minervois, it's just within the Saint-Jean-de-Minervois commune borders, just on the limestone, and it's just sweet Muscat. So it's Muscat, petit grain, small grain Muscat, and it's only fortified sweet Muscats. Otherwise, our wines are either in Vin de France or EGP Vin de Pays, because they don't follow the vineyard, the grape rules mostly. So in other words, we've got a 100-year-old Carignan, but it can't be Minervois because Minervois has to be a blend. So the 100-year-old Carignan is Vin de Pays de Côte de Brillant.
And you said it's 100% Carignan?
Yeah. I mean, we've been making that one for 21 years now. So
I think that's my favorite grape, red grape. Can you explain, talk a little bit about Carignan, why you love it, why it's unique, why it's generally old vine, and why we're seeing less and less of it?
Carignan was not what we expect to be working with. When Nicole was going to come up here to limestone gravel, she was going to plant Syrah and Cabernet Sauvignon to make her Grand Vin Rouge of Languedoc, which is what we did in 2000. But in order not to wait 5 years to have grapes, she bought a hectare just behind me of old Carignan and Grenache Gris. And we just expected to make mediocre wine until the good grapes started producing. Big surprise, Carignan, which was supposed to be harsh and rough and rustic, wasn't. It never got harsh and rustic and tough. And we were asking the question, well, why is it pretty elegant? And it's all about ripeness. Carignan's a late ripening variety that was planted down here because it's very well adapted to the soil, to the dryness, and to the heat. But it's also a variety which tends to produce if you push it to produce. So, and people down here tended to produce lots and lots and lots of juice per hectare. So if you produce a lot, you never get your Carignan ripe. If you reduce your yields and you wait, then you can get your Carignan really ripe. And when it's really ripe, it's lovely.
I see.
Pretty simple. So Carignan was in the 70s by far the most heavily planted grape here in the south of France, therefore in France, and therefore one of the most heavily in the world, with something like 250,000 hectares. It's now down to 55,000 hectares, so it's just been passed by Syrah and Grenache barely.
Okay.
But it still makes about a quarter of the Languedoc vineyard, and people are now replanting it. And if you look behind me, those are baby Carignan plants.
Oh, okay. But isn't there an expense to that because Carignan doesn't get great until the vines are like 15 years old, or is that a fallacy?
I'll be able to prove it to you in about 3 years, but we've got a group called Carignan Renaissance, which is a growers group with about 60 of us in it, and only old Carignan is good Carignan is sort of the last urban Carignan myth.
Oh, good.
As far I've tasted young Carignans, and they're just as good as the same producer's old Carignans. It's really a question of ripeness.
Okay.
And so if you reduce your yields on your young Carignans and you don't let it overproduce, especially concerning its rootstocks, then
Sorry to interrupt you. Go ahead and finish what you were saying. I'm sorry.
Oh, so yeah, you can make really nice wine. I'm convinced with young Carignan, but I'll actually be able to prove it to myself in about 3 years.
When you say reduce your harvest, or reduce your output, how do you do that?
Well, the first way of reducing harvest is pruning shorter. So the longer you prune, the more eyes you have. The more eyes you have, the more branches you have. The more branches you have, the more bunches you have, and the more bunches you have, the more juice you have. So at some point, the number of bunches, the amount of juice outweighs the capacity of the leaves to provide sugar and ripeness. And you need to be under that point.
So you're doing that even when you prune, you're thinking that far ahead in the year. It's not just when you actually have vines and shoots and suckers and extra little clusters.
Oh yeah. I mean, every grower, the first choice, as a wine grower, you make lots of choices. Some of them, like being here in Saint-Jean-de-Minervois and Cazelle, is a choice maybe you make once in a lifetime. What kind of soil am I going to work with?
Right.
But the date you pick and how you prune is a choice you make each and every year. And how you prune is pretty much for about 80% deciding your yield. And then, of course, when you pick is 100% deciding exactly what you're going to get when you put it in the tank.
So all the land that you have, what was it before you bought it? Was it destined for co-ops and just owned by different farmers?
Yeah. Well, this, for instance, where I'm sitting right now, which we planted last year. Well, actually, I'm sitting in a mixture of Picpoul Gris, Picpoul Blanc, and Picpoul Noir.
Huh.
But 50 meters behind me, it's all baby Carignan.
Okay.
This was a vineyard we bought in 1996, ripped out so that we could plant the Syrah and the Cabernet in another place. And since 1996, it's been sitting fallow. Oh. And our old Carignan is now 108 years old or 109 years old, and so I figured, well, we really need to do something which is going to keep it going. So we planted this parcel, or at least the Carignan of it, to take over from the old Carignan. But I'm sure the 109-year-old Carignan will probably last longer than we do.
Oh, really? You think it has a really good future still?
Yeah, I mean, we're for something that's 109 years old, we're still pulling 15, 20 hectoliters a hectare.
Wow.
Which is perfectly reasonable.
And are the old vines organized in rows like the ones you just planted, or are they more like bush vines?
They're bush vines, and they're organized in narrow rows. So what's behind me is planted 1 meter by 2 meters, so 5,000 a hectare. And I can get tractors and intercept plows and other things through there with no problem. The Carignan's planted 150 by 150, which is designed to be plowed by horse, and it's twisted because it's been through 2 world wars and the 1950s when you had mechanization. So the branches are all over the place. So I've got a Chenillard, a small crawler tractor, which is about 82 centimeters wide, and it's almost as old as I am. And I plow with that, and then we between the vines we weed whack.
Are they done like that to let the wind go through, like in Chateauneuf du Pape, or why are they not planted in rows in the old school?
But they are planted in rows.
Well, they're in rows, but they're just...
yeah, they're planted in rows, just the rows are much closer together.
I see.
So as opposed to being planted 2 meters by 1 meter as here, they're planted 1.5 by 1.5.
And it's the Grenache Gris is a separate little section, all also in rows?
Yeah. I mean, it's the Grenache Gris is just half of the plot is Grenache Gris and half the plot is Carignan.
Okay. Can you tell me about the sweet wine you mentioned?
Yeah. When we got to Saint-Jean, it's a Muscat de Saint-Jean-de-Minervois. It's called Douce Providence. It's a fortified Muscat. So when it is about 3/4 done with the fermentation, it gets fortified. So we put in alcohol to stop the fermentation. That keeps once it's over 15%, the yeasts tend to stop, and so it's a way of staying sweet. In Saint-Jean-de-Minervois, there's 5 sweet Muscat appellations in the south of France. The 2 biggest are Rivesaltes and Frontignan. But then there's Minervois, Saint-Jean-de-Minervois, Clos. Saint-Jean's the smallest one. and also the only one that's up at altitude, so we're between 250 and 300 meters.
Okay.
So
Does,
it's cooler and more acidic.
does it have kind of a history like the Rives Alpes, that the fortification from the 1300s and then it got popular and is waning now?
I don't know if we can go back to 1300s, but yeah, when we arrived in Saint-Jean-de-Minervois in 1996, even the cooperative would have a sign out in August saying no more muscat, and like we're out of it. That is no longer the case. So
Oh, that's
um,
the same. And how do
it's lovely wine.
how do you drink it? Is it always a digestif, or some people?
Cold, cold. You drink it cold, and in large quantities. It is traditionally here drunk as an aperitif, but it goes really well with blue cheese, with foie gras. It's less alcoholic and less sweet than sauterne, so it's a little bit more digestible. It goes better with food. We've been doing some testing to try to figure out what else goes with. So there's some chefs, and we found that it goes really well with Thai food. What is it? Cilantro.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, because
really well.
I'm a big Sauterne fan. I'm fascinated by the sweet wines and how I think the sugar was like a preservative in the past, and then it got really popular, and now it's faded away, and people think there's so much sugar, but it's like, do you know how much sugar is in your margarita? It's a whole other thing.
Yeah, or in your Diet Pep or your Diet Coke, your Mountain Dew or whatever.
Yeah, all that.
What seems to have really stuck a knife in Muscat new generation is rosé.
Okay.
People have been drinking more and more rosé, and especially here where everybody, or at least the women, would drink Muscat, where the men would be drinking pastis.
Oh,
now
okay.
it's rosé and then a little bit beer and so on and so forth.
The way these live chats work, people pop in and pop out. So more than we have a completely new audience from at the beginning. So okay. Can you again say who you are and where you are, and then can we have a broader view of when I went to wine school? It was just kind of like Languedoc as a catch-all in a way, and now you're hearing about all the little appellations, which is exciting to me. And can you kind of take the broad term of Languedoc and then down to where you are again?
Okay, John Bojanowski, Clos de Gravillas in Saint-Jean-de-Minervois, which is about half an hour uphill from Narbonne. For people who are in the States, maybe 3-hour drive door to door to Barcelona. The center of Barcelona is an easy way to think about it. Languedoc is the world's largest wine producing region. Languedoc-Roussillon runs from the Spanish border along the Mediterranean all the way over to the Rhone. In Languedoc, there are 2,700 wineries with about the same population as Kentucky, where I grew up, where there are now 60. So you really have to find your niche and figure out who you are if you want to make and sell wine. In Languedoc, there are many appellations, Côte de Languedoc or over toward this side of Languedoc, we're in the Minervois, we're in between Corbière and Saint-Chinian, and just to this other side of Saint-Chinian is Fougères. So if people are familiar with those, then maybe it's all mostly a base of Syrah, Carignan, Grenache, and then some other things. It's about 95% red. So we're quite unusual in that we've got half white. So we've got eight white or pink grapes, and it's a really great place for white, but it's traditionally red, so there's much more red.
And someone had asked about the soils again, particularly yours and Minervois.
Okay. Minervois got 7 official soil regions. Ours, I put it on the other side. If I can flip my screen around. There. Okay. So this is our soil. So when I hear Americans talk about, oh, those galets roulés in Châteauneuf-du-Pape, I say, well, they ain't got the only rocks in town. And actually, really, about 2 times a year, somebody comes here and he says, did it cost you a lot of money to bring in all those rocks? I mean, that's a lot of rocks. And of course, I answer, yes, of course, it costs a lot of money to bring all those rocks in. But that's why it's good. Very nice. But yeah, there's a lot. Languedoc's a wonderful place to make wine because it's got great weather. It's got great soils. It's got a lot of wine making talent. You can get land here really, really cheaply. So a really nice trellised, not so old Syrah vine you can probably get for 15 or 20,000 euros, which is almost the same thing in dollars.
Mm-hmm.
I was in Arizona, near Tucson, south of Tucson, and the winemaker we visited there, we were visiting. He said, "How much does it cost land here?" He says, "It's $25,000 an acre for land."
Yeah.
So $60,000 a hectare just for the land before you spend another 20 to plant it. So it's
wow.
And here, I mean, this is producing vines, and I can get old Carignan vines for half that price.
And who's buying your Carignan? Because it is an unusual grape. I think it takes it. You have to hand sell it as a sommelier, but people love it when they taste it. How do you get out there and into people's hands, and who's buying it?
We sell 50-60% in France, which we didn't expect at all. My wife was an export manager, and I was in international sales as well. So we thought, they don't need us in France. We're going to sell everything in Kentucky or Chicago or somewhere. But immediately, the first year, we sold almost all our wine in France, in Paris, and down here in the south, just by going to wine shops and saying, here we've got white made out of Grenache and red made out of Carignan. Taste it. And people said, wow, and they bought it. That's pretty much the way it's gone ever since, except for, now we just get some word of mouth as well. And so people come and say, oh, we've tasted your wine somewhere and we'd like to sell it in our shop, or we'd like to sell it in your restaurant, and slowly we've gotten importers as well.
So it's a little more
in the United States.
It's wine bars and restaurants that
wine shops, wine bars, and restaurants. We're heavily on wine shops right now. Obviously.
Say again?
Heavily wine shops right now.
Yes, heavily. Hopefully that's going to start changing. We'll see. You guys are a little ahead of us on that front. My friend Carrie Sumner, who makes Carignan, we had a little project. She was asking you, she loves your white and would like to have you talk about the texture of your white wine.
Maybe she should. No, we actually, she's probably talking about our Inattendu, which is the first one we made with Grenache Gris, which now has Grenache Blanc and Macabeu in it. So it's much more a Catalan blend, so where she's from.
Yep.
Some reason 80 years ago, somebody planted those things here. Who knows why, but thank God they did.
Yeah.
It's relatively ripe grapes. It is malo done. It's got a nice acidity, primarily because it's here up at altitude on limestone, and it's got a really soft, luscious texture. But I'm a grape grower, not a somm. So
I like hearing you guys talk about your wine, though. It's a whole different aspect of it. I actually have a theory that because most somms, if they're drinking wine after work, they're drinking white wine, and more often than not, like what you're talking about. And they're big and they're textural, and they're really interesting wines that can hold up to various types of food. What food?
Exactly. I mean, with the Grenache, the Inattendu, people oftentimes say this can substitute as a white Chateauneuf du Pape, with a little bit less alcohol. But we've also, once we had Grenache Gris and then we had Grenache Blanc, we decided that Grenache Gris was much nicer than Grenache Blanc. We had an opportunity to buy some Terret Gris, so pink Terret, which is an old variety from here. And we thought it was going to be blended together, but it was so different, so much lighter and less aromatic and mineral and almost saline that we bottled it by itself. So I don't think that's what Carrie was talking about.
She says we'll chat later. I don't know if you're in trouble. That's a threat.
We'll chat later, John. Oh, well, maybe she wants to trade some bottles. That would be really cool because we're starting to run out. We're starting to run out of good things to drink.
So what kind of food do you eat in the Languedoc, in Minervois, and then what do you like with your wines?
We tend to eat really good food. We're a little bit short on good comfort American stuff. Like a really good burger is hard to come by here.
Yeah.
I had barbecue. We've got in 2-3 villages away, we've got some English people who are smoking meat and making barbecue, like real barbecue. So we had that last weekend, which was a great way to sort of pop out of lockdown.
Yeah.
My wife's parents met and married in Morocco, where they were Pied Noir. They came here when there was trouble in Morocco and Algeria in 1962. So there's some tagine and North African cooking, which she knows how to do much better than things like cassoulet. Though now she's figured out how to do cassoulet, and it's great. At lunchtime we had pork things, travers de porc. So it's almost like really fat bacon.
Okay.
With pasta. That was yummy. Yeah, we eat really, really, really well. And we're starting to get some things from the garden now. We just got some snow peas, and tomatoes are going to be a while yet. We had the first 5 strawberries this morning. They were yummy.
So, and
what do we drink with the wines? It depends on which wine. The Grenache Gris Blanc. Macabeu tends to be poultry and sauce. Solid cheeses. I mean, like good flavorful cheeses. We're just drinking it like that.
Yeah,
exactly. We've got an orange wine which goes great with sauerkraut and mushrooms and anything that's got melted cheese and bacon in it. The Muscat de Saint-Jean de Minervois I already talked about. Carignan is rich, fatty meats like lamb or guinea fowl. Cassoulet. The Minervois, which is Syrah and Carignan and Grenache and Cinsault, is more just a steak or duck breast. Vegetarian options also possible.
And that was a good rundown of your wines too. I'm going to let you go in a couple of minutes because we're right about at the half-hour mark, and
okay.
That. But just to go back to Carrie was saying, she was thinking more about whether you thought your texture came from the soil, I guess, as opposed to winemaking.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that happen that we really don't know how to explain. I mean, every year, inattendu tastes like inattendu. And it's got this sort of sapid texture with a little edge on it, which we assume comes from the limestone. But I don't know, maybe it comes from the clothes we wear, or there's a lot of unexplained things that I'm a little bit too humble to try to explain them.
I actually like that there's still some mystery in winemaking. When it's all explained and scientific, it's going to be a little less magical.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, can you talk about Languedoc Outsiders, the Instagram account that I'm learning about as we go?
Okay. Outsiders is a group which has been going for about 10 years. I think we're closing in on 20 members. Each domain comes from somewhere else. In the beginning, somewhere else was the USA, England, Australia, New Zealand. More recently, somewhere else has been expanded to include growers who grew up in Bordeaux or who made wine before in Bordeaux and now are coming here because Bordeaux's really, really, really somewhere else.
Yeah.
And it's just people who tend to think out of the box because that's where they came from. And so, I mean, our case in point is when we arrived, Carignan was supposed to be bad, but that's what we had, so we made it, and we tried to make it good like we were going to make the Syrah and the Cabernet, and voila, when it was good, we told people.
Yeah.
Made news about it.
I just visited the Languedoc. I mean, I've driven through a little bit, but I got to spend a lot more time this past January and February, and I just fell in love. The region is just so gorgeous. And so I think if there's any one region that I've done more of, on this Vineyard Chat series. It's been Languedoc, because people like you are making exciting wines that they're not ordinary. They're just really special wines that do speak of the place, and it's such a lovely place. So thank you so much for chatting with us.
Thank you very much for having me. See you down here next Millésime Bio, maybe.
I don't know if I'm going to get over there for that one, but I'm going to get over there, and I will definitely look for you. So thanks again, John. It's really nice to chat, and we'll be in touch. And trade some wine with Carrie so I can taste for sure if I don't see you. Maybe she'll bring a bottle when she comes next.
Ah, okay. Well, yes, absolutely.
Because I think
she really needs some more good stuff to drink. And we just drank the last of their jouet, their little jouet thing.
Oh, yeah, nice. Excellent. Awesome. Well, thanks again, John. It's really good to talk, and thank you for showing us your property and educating us a little bit. Have a good day now.
Take care.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.